Pannonica de Koenigswarter, known affectionately as Nica, was a woman whose life bridged worlds of unimaginable wealth and raw artistic passion. Born into the Rothschild dynasty, one of Europe's most influential banking families, she could have lived a life of quiet luxury, attending high society events and upholding the traditions of her elite lineage. But instead she became a legendary patron of jazz, particularly the innovative bebop scene that revolutionized music in the mid-20th century. Her story unfolds as one of rebellion, compassion, and unyielding dedication from the stately halls of England, where she grew up amid opulent estates and strict social norms, to the smoky clubs of New York, where she found her true calling among creative souls. As a friend, protector, and muse to icons like Thelonious Monk and Charlie Parker, Nica's choices defied societal norms, costing her family ties and her marriage, but earning her a place in music history as the Bebop Baroness. Her journey reminds us how one person's pursuit of authenticity can resonate through generations, changing not just her own life, but the cultural landscape around her, inspiring others to follow their passions regardless of the consequences. Early life and family background, 1913 to 1923. Nica entered the world on December 10, 1913 in London as Kathleen Annie Pannonica Rothschild, the youngest of 4 children in one of Europe's most powerful banking families, a dynasty whose financial acumen had influenced global economies for generations. Her father, Charles Rothschild, was a dedicated banker by day, managing the family's vast financial empire from the historic N.M. Rothschild and Sons offices in the City of London, but a passionate entomologist at heart, spending his free time cataloging butterflies and moths in the English countryside, often embarking on expeditions to remote areas in search of rare specimens, such as the deserts of Sudan, where he identified the flea vector for the bubonic plague, Xenocilla chiapis, or the Carpathian Mountains, where he met his future wife while chasing butterflies. It was he who named her Pannonica, after a rare moth species, Eublema pannonica, discovered during his travels, a detail she often romanticized as being inspired by a butterfly to add a poetic flair to her unusual moniker, though family records later clarified the moth origin, reflecting her father's quirky scientific obsessions and his groundbreaking work in describing over 500 new flea species, amassing a collection of 260,000 specimens now preserved at the Natural History Museum in London. Her mother, Rosika Edele von Wertheimstein, a Hungarian baroness, infused the household with Eastern European elegance and resilience, having grown up in a noble family from Bihar County, where she learned the arts of diplomacy and cultural blending that would subtly influence Nica's later life, including her ability to navigate diverse social worlds with grace and determination. The Rothschilds' wealth was legendary, shaping nations through finance and philanthropy, with their banking houses funding wars, railways, and governments across Europe, from backing the British effort against Napoleon to establishing modern conservation efforts. Nica's paternal grandfather was Nathan Rothschild, the first Baron Rothschild, a key figure in British finance who helped finance the government's efforts during the Napoleonic Wars and was the first Jewish peer in the House of Lords. Her uncle Walter, the second Baron, was a famed zoologist with a private museum of exotic animals, housing thousands of specimens in his estate, including giant tortoises and zebras that roam the grounds, along with over 2 million butterflies and 300,000 bird skins in his zoological museum at Tring, which he opened to the public in 1892, and which became a wonder for visitors, filled with stuffed mammals, reptiles, and insects that sparked curiosity in the young Nica. Her brother Victor would later become the third Baron, a scientist and spy who worked on cracking codes during World War II, and even advised on biological warfare, displaying an early aptitude for science that mirrored the family's intellectual bent. Her sisters included the eldest, Liberty, Elizabeth Charlotte, who led a more private life but shared in the family's eccentricities, and Miriam, who emerged as a renowned zoologist and author, pioneering research on fleas and butterflies, including groundbreaking studies on chemical communication in insects that built on their father's legacy. Life revolved around grand estates like Tring Park Mansion in Hertfordshire, a sprawling neoclassical home filled with scientific curiosities and surrounded by manicured gardens, where exotic animals like kangaroos and emus wandered the parklands, sometimes disrupting the flower beds, and where the family spent summers amid the Zoological Museum's expansions, with wings added for more displays that turned the property into a living laboratory. They also frequented Waddesdon Manor in Buckinghamshire, a French Renaissance-style chateau where the family hosted royalty and intellectuals, complete with priceless art collections, including works by Gainsborough and Reynolds, elaborate dinners served by liveried footmen, and gardens designed with three-dimensional bedding schemes shaped like birds, featuring an aviary of exotic species that echoed the family's love for nature, all under the care of relatives, like Baron Ferdinand de Rothschild's sister, Alice, who meticulously tended the grounds until her death in 1922. Yet beneath this fairy tale exterior lurked shadows that would profoundly shape Nica's worldview, casting a pall over the opulent surroundings and intellectual pursuits. Charles suffered from severe mood disorders, swinging between prolonged silences where he withdrew into his study for days, poring over insect catalogs or refinery inventions he designed for gold collection at the family's operations, and manic bursts of conversation that filled the house with animated discussions on insects or finance, his enthusiasm infectious, but his despair hidden. He despised the banking world, feeling trapped by the family legacy and the relentless pressure to uphold the Rothschild name, despite his innovations like automated gold handling devices, and preferred escaping into nature, where he founded nature reserves like Wicken Fen in 1899, the UK's first, and Wood Walton Fen in 1910, building a bungalow there for solitary retreats amid the wetlands he protected for future generations. His mental health struggles, exacerbated by chronic encephalitis that caused debilitating fatigue and depression, culminated in tragedy when he took his own life in 1923 at age 46 by slitting his throat in the locked bathroom of Ashton Wold, another family property he had rebuilt as a model village with modern amenities for workers, leaving 10-year-old Nica devastated in the family in hushed mourning, as suicide was a taboo subject in their circles, whispered about only in private, and prompting a veil of silence that deepened the children's grief. This loss, rarely discussed in public but deeply felt, Miriam at 15 abandoned her natural history studies for 2 years in shock, while the family rallied around Rosica, who carried on with quiet strength, instilled in her a profound empathy for those battling inner demons, a trait that would define her later support for troubled musicians facing addiction and mental illness, as she drew from the pain of losing a father whose passions mirrored her own budding creativity. Growing up under strict governesses who enforced pristine white dresses and rigid etiquette, with daily routines of lessons in French, riding, and deportment amid the estate's formal atmospheres, Nica learned early that privilege often came with invisible chains, fostering a quiet resentment toward conformity and a longing for freedom that simmered beneath her polished exterior, even as she showed early artistic promise, sketching insects from her father's collections, or the roaming animals at Tring, hinting at the independent spirit that would one day lead her far from this world. Adolescence, Education and Early Interests, 1920s to 1930s. As Nica entered her teens, the world around her was in flux, a whirlwind of transformation that mirrored the internal changes she was experiencing as a young girl navigating the complexities of growing up in one of Europe's most illustrious families. The Roaring Twenties, that glittering decade of excess and innovation, had dawned with flapper fashion sweeping through London society, short bobbed hair, knee-length skirts, and a sense of liberation that emboldened women to dance the Charleston in smoke-filled nightclubs and challenge the Victorian constraints of their mother's era. Prohibition-era speakeasies in America might have been an ocean away, but their spirit echoed across the Atlantic, influencing British youth with tales of bootleg gin and underground parties. For Nica, born in 1913, these years marked her transition from childhood innocence to adolescent curiosity, a time when she began to question the rigid boundaries of her privileged existence. Yet this era of apparent freedom was tempered by darker undercurrents. The aftermath of World War I had scarred Europe profoundly, leaving families like the Rothschilds grappling with lost fortunes from the war's economic devastation, shifting social orders that threatened old aristocracies, and a lingering grief over the millions lost in the trenches. In England, where Nica spent much of her early teens, the class structures remained as rigid as ever, with the upper echelons clinging to traditions of debutante balls, fox hunts, and arranged marriages, even as the lower classes agitated for change amid rising unemployment and labor strikes. The Wall Street crash of 1929, when Nica was just 15, sent shockwaves through global markets, including the Rothschild banking empire, which had long been intertwined with international finance. While her family remained insulated in their vast estates, thanks to diversified investments in mining, railways, and philanthropy, the crash exacerbated economic instability, leading to widespread poverty and political unrest that Nica could not entirely ignore, even from the safety of her gilded world. Newspapers in the family drawing rooms at Tring Park Mansion would have been filled with headlines of bank runs and breadlines, fostering in her a nascent awareness of inequality that would later draw her to the marginalized artists of the jazz scene. Meanwhile, the rise of fascism in Europe cast increasingly long shadows. In Italy, Mussolini's black shirts had consolidated power by the mid-1920s, while in Germany, Adolf Hitler's Nazi Party was gaining traction, its inflammatory rhetoric seeping into conversations among intellectuals and diplomats who visited the Rothschild homes. For a sensitive teenager like Nica, these global tensions must have felt both distant and ominously close, especially given her family's Jewish heritage, which would become a target in the years ahead. Yet, amid this turbulence, cultural shifts offered glimmers of excitement, like the Jazz Age with its syncopated rhythms from across the Atlantic beginning to infiltrate even elite circles in London. American jazz records, imported through ports like Southampton, found their way into fashionable parties, where young socialites swayed to the sounds of Duke Ellington or Louis Armstrong, sparking Nica's early fascination with music that felt alive, rebellious, and utterly unlike the staid waltzes of her parents' generation. Nica's artistic talents emerged early, providing a personal outlet for her burgeoning sense of self in these formative years. At just 11, in 1924, still on the cusp of adolescence but already showing promise, She won a silver medal from the Royal Drawing Society for her sketches, a lesser-known achievement that hinted at her creative spirit and set her apart from her siblings' more scientific pursuits. The Royal Drawing Society, founded to encourage artistic education among the youth, awarded her for works that likely captured the natural world around her, influenced by her father's entomological collections. She spent hours drawing butterflies from his meticulously labeled specimens, their delicate wings rendered with a precision that echoed Charles Rothschild's own passion, or capturing the landscapes around Tring Park with a keen eye for detail, the rolling Hertfordshire hills, the ancient oak shading the mansion's drive, or the exotic animals in her Uncle Walter's menagerie, like the zebras grazing lazily under English skies. This award, presented in a ceremony amid London's artistic elite, must have been a moment of quiet triumph for the young Nica, affirming her individuality in a family dominated by bankers, scientists, and zoologists. It also foreshadowed her lifelong affinity for visual arts, which would later manifest in her photography of jazz musicians, where she sought to immortalize fleeting moments of human expression, much like she sketched ephemeral butterflies in her youth. As the 1920s gave way to the early 1930s, Nica's education took her beyond the confines of English tutors and governesses, immersing her in the vibrant cultural hubs of continental Europe. By this time, at around 17 or 18, she pursued art history studies in a series of cities that each offered unique perspectives on beauty, history, and societal change: Venice, Vienna, and Munich. These travels were not mere vacations but structured periods of learning, likely arranged through family connections to prestigious institutions or private mentors, allowing her to delve into the masterpieces of the past while witnessing the modern world's upheavals. Venice, with its romantic canals, decaying palazzos, and Renaissance masters like Titian and Bellini, was a dreamlike starting point. In the early 1930s, under Mussolini's regime, the city was a blend of timeless allure and subtle authoritarian control. Its Biennale art exhibition showcasing both classical influences and emerging fascist aesthetics. Nica would have wandered the Accademia galleries, sketching gondolas gliding through misty lagoons, or studying Titian's vibrant colors in The Assumption of the Virgin, feeling the weight of centuries in the Doge's palace. The city's labyrinthine streets, alive with opera echoes from La Fenice and the scent of salt water, broadened her appreciation for narrative in art, how paintings told stories of love, power, and loss, themes that resonated with her own family's history of triumph and tragedy. These experiences in Venice, perhaps spanning several months, ignited a sense of wanderlust, teaching her to see beauty in decay and impermanence, qualities she later found in the improvisational essence of jazz. From Venice, Nica moved to Vienna, a city alive with modernist movements such as Expressionism and the lingering influence of Freud's psychoanalysis, which was revolutionizing how people understood the human mind. In the early 1930s, Vienna was a cultural cauldron, its cafes like the Central or Herrenhof, buzzing with intellectuals, debating Schiele's raw portraits or Klimt's golden mosaics, even as economic depression gripped the nation. Nica, studying at institutions possibly affiliated with the University of Vienna or private academies, would have been exposed to avant-garde ideas that challenged traditional norms. Expressionist works by Egon Schiele, with their distorted figures expressing inner turmoil, mirroring the mood swings she had witnessed in her father. The city's psychoanalytic circles, inspired by Freud, who had lived there until 1938, might have subtly influenced her understanding of mental fragility, planting seeds for her later empathy toward artists battling personal demons. Amid the grandeur of the Hofburg Palace and the Ringstrasse's architecture, she explored museums like the Kunsthistorisches, sketching Baroque masterpieces or attending lectures on art's psychological depths. Vienna's Jewish cultural scene, vibrant despite rising anti-Semitism, connected her to her heritage. With visits to synagogues or family friends in the community, these months in Vienna expanded her worldview, introducing her to the interplay of emotion and form, fostering a rebellious streak against the proper art her family collected, Rembrandts and Gainsboroughs, in favor of more expressive modern styles. Munich, her final stop in this educational odyssey, presented a stark contrast where bohemian undercurrents clashed with growing political tensions under Hitler's influence. By the early 1930s, the Nazi Party was ascending, its 1923 beer hall putsch a recent memory, and the city buzzed with propaganda rallies amid the grandeur of the residence palace. Nica, studying art history perhaps at the Ludwig Maximilian University or through private tutors, immersed herself in the Pinakothek museums, sketching Dürer's self-portraits or Rubens's dramatic canvases, but she couldn't ignore the rising Nazi suppression of degenerate art, modern works by Picasso or Kandinsky labeled as corrupt. This foreshadowed the horrors to come, including the 1937 exhibition mocking such art. But in her time there, Munich's bohemian scene in Schwabing district offered cafes and galleries where young artists debated surrealism and Dada. The political volatility must have unsettled her, with swastikas appearing on streets and anti-Jewish sentiment simmering, reminding her of her family's vulnerability despite their wealth. These experiences in Munich honed her critical eye, teaching her art's power to provoke and resist, while the city's beer halls and folk festivals provided lighter moments of cultural immersion. Overall, these studies, from Venice's romance to Vienna's intellect to Munich's tension, broadened her worldview, exposing her to diverse cultures and ideas that fueled her independence, including early forays into photography, experimenting with a Leica camera to capture street scenes or architectural details, skills she would later use to document jazz life with candid Polaroid snapshots that captured the raw humanity of musicians in unguarded moments. Nica's teenage years also sparked her love for jazz, a genre that symbolized the era's spirit of defiance and joy. Discovered through her father's record collection of early ragtime and blues imports, perhaps Scott Joplin's piano rolls or Bessie Smith's soulful vocals, she played them secretly in her room at Tring Park, the gramophone's needles scratching out rhythms that transported her from the estate's formal parlors. This was a subtle rebellion against the classical music favored by her class, like Beethoven symphonies performed by visiting quartets at family gatherings or Wagner operas attended in London. Jazz, arriving in England via American troops post-World War I, and performers like the original Dixieland Jazz Band touring in 1919 had captivated the youth with clubs like the Shim Sham in Soho hosting all-night dances. For Nica, at 14 or 15, sneaking listens after lights out, the music's improvisation mirrored her desire for freedom, its blue notes echoing her grief over her father's death. By the late 1920s, as she spent a year in Paris, another hub of her education, the city's Montmartre jazz clubs, frequented by expatriates like Josephine Baker, deepened this passion, her chaperoned visits introducing her to live performances that pulsed with energy. Adventure called in other forms too, as Nica sought thrills beyond the confines of debutante balls and arranged social outings, where young women like her were paraded in white gowns at Buckingham Palace presentations. defying expectations for women of her status, who were often limited to genteel pursuits like needlework or horseback riding on the estate's trails. She learned to fly airplanes at Le Touquet Airport in France, a fashionable resort airfield popular among the elite for cross-channel hops. Embracing the thrill of the skies in open cockpit biplanes, like the de Havilland Moth, she felt the wind rush past as she soared over the English Channel, mastering loops and landings under instructors' guidance. This daring pursuit, inspired by pioneers like Amy Johnson, who flew solo to Australia in 1930, symbolized her independent streak in an era when aviation was a male-dominated frontier, with women pilots facing skepticism but gaining fame through record-breaking flights. Le Touquet, with its sandy beaches and casino glamour, became her escape, the hum of propellers drowning out societal pressures. It was here, at the airfield around 1934, when she was 21, that this pursuit led to a pivotal meeting. Baron Jules de Koenigswarter, a French diplomat and widower a decade her senior, who shared her passion for aviation and had his own stories of aerial escapades as a mining engineer and banker. Jules, 31 at the time, was a worldly figure, educated in France, widowed with a young son, and involved in international affairs, whose charm and shared adrenaline drew her in immediately. Their connection was immediate, blending romance with shared adrenaline as they bonded over flights, discussing engine mechanics or the thrill of takeoff, and worldly topics like the League of Nations failures or the rise of dictators. This encounter, amid the roar of planes and salt air, set the stage for a whirlwind courtship, with dates that included joyrides over the French countryside or dinners in Paris, marking the end of her adolescence and the beginning of a new chapter that would soon lead to marriage and further adventures. Marriage and pre-war family wife, 1935 to 1939. In 1935, Nica and Jules married in New York City, a choice that reflected their unconventional spirits, opting for the bustling energy of Manhattan over a traditional European ceremony, perhaps to escape the scrutiny of her family's social circle. This decision was emblematic of the couple's shared sense of adventure and desire to break free from the rigid expectations that had defined Nica's upbringing in the Rothschild dynasty. New York in the mid-1930s was a city pulsing with life, recovering from the depths of the Great Depression, but alive with the glamour of skyscrapers, like the Empire State Building, which had just opened a few years earlier, and the vibrant cultural scene of Broadway, shows and Harlem Renaissance influences seeping into downtown. For Nica, then 21, and Jules, 31, choosing to wed in this American metropolis was a bold statement. They exchanged vows in a simple yet elegant ceremony at a registry office, or perhaps an upscale hotel like the Plaza, surrounded by a small circle of friends rather than the hordes of European aristocracy that might have attended a Rothschild wedding in London or Paris. This transatlantic union symbolized not just their love, but also Nica's emerging independence, a subtle rebellion against the arranged matches common in her class, where alliances were often forged for financial or social gain rather than passion. Jules, with his background as a French diplomat and mining engineer, brought a worldly sophistication that complemented Nica's artistic leanings, and their meeting at the Le Touquet airfield had already hinted at a partnership built on shared thrills. The wedding, though understated by Rothschild standards, was followed by celebrations that captured the era's mix of optimism and escapism. Perhaps a dinner at a speakeasy-style venue, toasting with bootleg-inspired cocktails, even as Prohibition had ended just 2 years prior. This choice of location also allowed them to blend into the anonymity of the city, away from the prying eyes of British tabloids or Hungarian relatives who might disapprove of Jules's status as a widower with a young son from his previous marriage. Their honeymoon was an epic adventure, far removed from the typical European tours of the elite who might opt for the French Riviera or Swiss Alps. Instead, Nica and Jules embarked on a globe-trotting odyssey that took them to the far reaches of Asia and beyond, embodying the spirit of exploration that defined their early relationship. Traveling to Beijing, where they experimented with opium in dimly lit dens, immersing themselves in the exotic underbelly of the city. This was a time when China was a land of intrigue, caught between the fading Qing dynasty influences and the rising tensions of Japanese aggression in Manchuria. Beijing, in 1935, was a city of contrast. Ancient forbidden city palaces juxtaposed with modern rickshaws and foreign concessions, where Westerners like them could indulge in forbidden pleasures. The opium dens, hidden in hutong alleys, offered a hazy escape, with reclining couches and pipes passed under flickering lanterns, an experience that Nica later recounted with a mix of thrill and reflection, highlighting her willingness to explore the edges of society. This wasn't mere tourism. It was a deliberate dive into the unknown, perhaps influenced by Jules's engineering travels or Nica's inherited curiosity from her father's entomological expeditions. Surviving a plane crash unscathed in a remote area, which only heightened their sense of invincibility, this incident, occurring perhaps over rugged Chinese terrain or during a hop to another Asian destination, involved a small propeller plane sputtering and forcing an emergency landing in a field, with locals rushing to help. Emerging from the wreckage, laughing and unharmed, they treated it as just another story to tell, reinforcing their bond through shared peril, and even exploring an adult toy shop, details seldom shared in aristocratic circles, but illustrative of Nica's curiosity and willingness to flout norms, embracing experiences that shocked her conservative relatives. Such a visit, possibly in a bustling market in Shanghai or Hong Kong, exposed them to curiosities from Eastern cultures, items crafted from ivory or silk that challenged Western prudishness. These honeymoon escapades, lasting several months, weren't just vacations. They were a manifesto of their partnership, blending romance with risk and setting a tone of nonconformity that would define their early years together. Upon returning, tales of their adventures circulated in whispers among friends, cementing their reputation as a couple unafraid of the unconventional. Settling in France, they purchased Château d'Abondon, a majestic 17th century castle northwest of Paris, once owned by American banker Henry Herman Harges, and featuring grand ballrooms, sprawling gardens, and a moat that evoked fairy tales. This acquisition in 1937 marked their commitment to establishing a family home, blending Jules's French roots with Nica's international flair. The chateau, located in the Eure-et-Loir department about 50 miles from Paris, was a sprawling estate of over 100 acres, its stone facade rising imposingly from the landscape, with turrets that pierced the sky and windows framed by ivy. Built in the reign of Louis XIV, it had a rich history, originally a hunting lodge for nobility, later expanded into a full castle with Renaissance influences, and acquired by Harges, a partner at J.P. Morgan, who modernized it with electricity and plumbing in the early 20th century. The moat, fed by a nearby stream, added a romantic defensive charm, while the gardens, designed in the formal French style with geometric parterres, fountains, and topiary hedges, provided a serene backdrop for leisurely walks. Inside, the grand ballrooms boasted crystal chandeliers, gilded mirrors, and frescoed ceilings depicting mythological scenes, perfect for the soirees Nica would host. The purchase was funded by a combination of Jules's diplomatic salary and Nica's Rothschild inheritance, making it a symbol of their merged worlds. Moving in involved a flurry of activity, hiring gardeners to restore the overgrown paths, decorators to update the antique furnishings with modern touches like Art Deco lamps, and a staff of maids, cooks, and butlers to maintain the estate's elegance. For Nica, this was a new chapter, transitioning from her nomadic studies in Venice, Vienna, and Munich to the stability of domesticity. Yet the chateau's vastness, over 50 rooms, including libraries stocked with leather-bound volumes and salons for afternoon tea, offered space for her creative pursuits, like sketching in the orangery or playing records in the music room. Here, Nica assumed the role of a traditional society hostess, welcoming guests to lavish gatherings with multi-course dinners, chamber music, and discussions on politics and art, while managing a staff of servants who maintained the estate's elegance. As the Baroness de Koenigswarter, she embraced the expectations of her new title, organizing events that drew from Paris's elite circles, diplomats, artists, and expatriates who flocked to the chateau for weekends of refinement. A typical soirée might begin with aperitifs in the salon, served on silver trays by uniformed footmen, followed by a dinner of escargot, coq au vin, and crème brûlée, paired with wines from the cellar's extensive collection. Chamber music, perhaps a string quartet playing Mozart or Debussy, provided the soundtrack, while conversations ranged from the latest surrealist exhibitions in Paris, Dali's melting clocks were the talk of 1937, to the ominous politics of the day, like the Spanish Civil War or Hitler's remilitarization of the Rhineland. Nica, fluent in multiple languages from her education, facilitated these discussions with charm, her artistic background allowing her to engage on topics like Picasso's Guernica, unveiled in 1937, which stirred debates on art's role in protesting fascism. Managing the household was no small task. She oversaw a staff of about 20, including a stern housekeeper who ensured linens were starched and silver polished, a chef trained in Parisian kitchens, and gardeners who tended the rose beds and vegetable plots. Daily life involved morning meetings with the staff, planning menus, and tending to the estate's operations, from repairing the moat's bridges to hosting charity teas for local causes. Yet beneath this facade of domestic bliss, Nica found moments of joy in personal touches, like planting a butterfly garden in memory of her father, attracting species he had loved, or setting up a small darkroom for her budding photography interest. The couple had 5 children, though the pre-war years saw the birth of the first few, laying the foundation for their growing family. Patrick, born in 1936, and showing early signs of his mother's adventurous spirit, arriving amid the chateau's spring blooms, his cries echoing through the halls, as Nica recovered in a sunlit bedroom overlooking the gardens. Patrick's infancy was marked by playful explorations, crawling on Persian rugs or being wheeled in a pram along the moat's edge, foreshadowing his later career as a jazz producer, influenced subtly by Nica's emerging musical tastes. Janka, a spirited girl who inherited the family's intellectual curiosity, followed in 1937, her birth coinciding with the Paris World's Fair, where Jules might have taken Nica for outings amid pavilions showcasing futuristic technologies like television prototypes. Janka's early years involved story times in the library, where Nica read Hungarian folk tales from her mother's heritage, fostering a love for narratives that mirrored the family's global roots. Barrett, quiet and observant, born in 1938 as Europe teetered on the brink, brought a calm presence to the household, her wide eyes taking in the chateau's wonders during family picnics under oak trees, where sandwiches and lemonade were spread on blankets. Sean, energetic and playful, arrived in 1939 just as war clouds gathered, his laughter a brief respite amid rising anxieties, with Nica cradling him during air raid drills practiced in the cellars, and Carrie, the youngest, completing their family by 1947 in the post-war era. But during these pre-war years, the focus was on the elder children's formative moments, like teaching them to ride ponies in the stables or identifying birds in the aviary, echoing Uncle Walter's zoological passions. At first, family life seemed idyllic, with Nica managing the household amid the chateau's grandeur, organizing picnics in the gardens, and teaching her children about nature, echoing her father's passions for entomology. Summers were spent in the expansive grounds, where the moat reflected blue skies, and the family enjoyed boat rides or games of croquet on the lawns. Nica, drawing from her own childhood at Tring Park, encouraged outdoor explorations, hunting for butterflies with nets or planting seeds in the vegetable garden, instilling a love for the natural world. Winters brought cozy evenings by roaring fireplaces, with Jules reading adventure stories from Jules Verne, while Nica played piano pieces, her fingers dancing over keys in the music room. Holidays were grand affairs, Christmas with a towering tree adorned with Rothschild heirlooms, Easter egg hunts in the hedges, and birthdays celebrated with cakes from Parisian patisseries. Yet, as the years progressed, cracks began to appear in this picture-perfect existence. Jules's controlling nature, insisting on strict schedules for meals, bedtime, and even Nica's social engagements, rooted perhaps in his diplomatic precision, clashed with her free spirit. He expected her to embody the perfect baroness, hosting without flaw and prioritizing family over personal pursuits, which left her feeling stifled. The monotony of domestic duties, overseeing laundry lists, menu planning, and staff disputes, began to wear on her, evoking memories of her father's resentment toward his banking obligations, where passion was sacrificed for duty. She yearned for something more stimulating than embassy receptions in Paris, where conversations revolved around trade deals or fashion, or polite conversations at hunt balls in the countryside. As Europe edged toward war, with Hitler's aggression looming, the Anschluss of Austria in 1938 and the Munich Agreement that same year failing to appease the dictator, and refugees beginning to flee from Germany and Czechoslovakia, seeking shelter in France, these tensions simmered within the chateau's walls. Nica, aware of her family's Jewish ties, felt the encroaching threat, perhaps hosting displaced relatives or friends in guest wings, providing aid quietly amid the luxury. Jules, with his diplomatic contacts, brought home whispers of impending conflict, heightening the household's anxiety. For Nica, this period was a crucible where the idyll of marriage gave way to restlessness, her adventurous honeymoon spirit clashing with the confines of motherhood and society. The birth of Sean in 1939, just months before the invasion of Poland, marked the end of this pre-war chapter, as the family braced for the unknown. In these years, Nica's transformation began subtly, from a young bride reveling in novelty to a woman sensing the limitations of her role, her empathy deepening through motherhood, and her curiosity unquenched, setting the stage for her wartime heroism and eventual jazz immersion. The chateau, once a symbol of stability, became a sanctuary amid uncertainty, its moat a metaphor for the barriers she would soon cross. Rothschild involvement, 1939 to 1945. The outbreak of World War II shattered any illusions of stability as German forces advanced across Europe, bringing destruction and fear to the continent. in a wave of aggression that would redefine the world order for generations. It began with the invasion of Poland on September 1st, 1939, when Hitler's Wehrmacht unleashed blitzkrieg tactics, lightning-fast armored assaults supported by Luftwaffe airstrikes that overwhelmed Polish defenses in mere weeks, prompting Britain and France to declare war on Germany 2 days later. For families like the de Koenigswarters, nestled in their idyllic Chateau d'Abondance, the news arrived via crackling radio broadcasts and urgent telegrams, transforming distant headlines into immediate threats. Nica, then 25 and a mother of young children, had watched the prelude unfold, the Anschluss of Austria in 1938, the Munich agreement's failed appeasement, and the Kristallnacht pogroms that targeted Jewish communities, including those connected to her Rothschild heritage. The phony war period, the uneasy calm from September 1939 to May 1940, allowed a brief respite, but as spring bloomed in the French countryside, the illusion crumbled. German panzers rolled through the Ardennes forest, bypassing the Maginot Line, and by June 1940, Paris had fallen, with Nazi troops parading down the Champs-Élysées. France's capitulation led to the Vichy regime's collaboration under Marshal Pétain, dividing the country into occupied and free zones where resistance simmered underground. Amid this chaos, Jules, Nica's husband and a French diplomat with a sense of patriotic duty honed by his engineering background, could not stand idle. As Nazi forces invaded Poland and then France, Jules joined the Free French forces under General Charles de Gaulle, committing to the resistance against Germany from exile in London and later Africa. De Gaulle, broadcasting his famous Appeal of 18, June 1940 from BBC studios in London, called on Frenchmen to continue the fight, rejecting Vichy's armistice as betrayal. Jules, perhaps inspired by de Gaulle's defiant words, "France has lost a battle, but she has not lost the war," left his family to join this nascent movement, initially in London, where Free French headquarters formed amid Blitz bombings. His role evolved from administrative tasks to active resistance planning, leveraging his diplomatic contacts to rally support among expatriates. For Nica, left behind at the chateau with their children, Patrick 3, Jenka 2, Barrett 1, and expecting Sean, this separation was a profound test. Unwilling to abandon her home immediately, she transformed Chateau d'Abondance into a sanctuary for refugees and evacuees fleeing the occupation, drawing on her family's history of philanthropy that dated back to the Rothschilds' support for Jewish causes and conservation efforts. The chateau, with its vast cellars once used for wine storage, became hidden quarters for Jewish families escaping Paris's roundups, where Nica provided mattresses, blankets, and hushed conversations by candlelight to ease their fears. Food came from the estate's farms, potatoes, eggs, and milk rationed carefully amid shortages, while attics sheltered those needing temporary haven, their footsteps muffled on creaky floors. Forged documents, obtained through underground networks Jules had connected her to, aided escapes to neutral Switzerland or Spain, with Nica risking Gestapo raids by hiding identity papers in secret compartments. This quiet defiance echoed her father's empathy for the vulnerable, his suicide leaving her with a resolve to protect others from despair. Daily life turned clandestine. Servants loyal to the family smuggled supplies, while Nica maintained a facade of normalcy, hosting tea parties that masked aid meetings. The risks were immense. Neighbors collaborated with Vichy authorities, and patrols combed the countryside for undesirables. One close call might have involved a German officer inspecting the grounds, only deterred by Nica's poised hospitality, offering coffee while refugees hid below. Her actions saved lives, though she rarely spoke of specifics later, embodying the unsung heroism of many women in the resistance. As dangers escalated, with German troops occupying nearby areas and patrols increasing, tanks rumbling down rural roads, checkpoints demanding papers, and curfews enforcing silence after dark, Jules urged her to escape from his letters smuggled via couriers. The fall of France in 1940 had turned the once peaceful Eure-et-Loire region into a zone of suspicion, with collaborators denouncing neighbors and Luftwaffe planes droning overhead en route to bomb Britain. Nica, pregnant with Sean and managing the children's fears amid blackout curtains and ration books, faced a heart-wrenching decision. In a harrowing effort, she smuggled her children out of France to America, disguising them as ordinary travelers, dressing in simple clothes, hiding jewels in hymns, and coaching them to stay silent about their aristocratic roots. The journey began in late 1940 or early 1941, navigating occupied France to neutral Portugal, perhaps via train to Marseille, then bus to Lisbon, evading checkpoints with bribes or forged passes. At Lisbon's port, amid crowds of desperate refugees, they boarded a ship like the SS Excalibur or a Pan Am Clipper flying boat, crossing the Atlantic under threat of U-boats lurking in the waves. Nica's Rothschild connections secured visas, but the voyage was tense. Lifeboat drills darkened ships to avoid detection, and the constant hum of engines masking anxiety. Upon arrival in New York, she entrusted them to the Guggenheim family on Long Island for safekeeping, where they stayed in a seaside mansion like Cedar Knolls, away from the bombs, surrounded by sandy beaches and American comforts. The Guggenheims, fellow philanthropists with mining fortunes, provided a nurturing environment, tutors for lessons, playmates, and newsreels of the war that the children watched wide-eyed. For Nica, parting from her little ones, kissing tear-streaked faces at the dock was agonizing, but necessary. Letters later exchanged via Red Cross channels brought solace, describing their games on the beach or first tastes of peanut butter. Then, with her children safe, she plunged into the war effort herself, joining the Free French in Equatorial Africa after a perilous journey by ship, evading U-boats in the Atlantic that had sunk countless vessels in the Battle of the Atlantic. Departing from Lisbon or Casablanca in 1941, her convoy zigzagged across the ocean, blacked out at night to foil submarine periscopes, with depth charges booming in the distance. Arriving in Brazzaville, the capital of Free French Africa in the Congo, she entered a steamy, mosquito-ridden world far from the chateau's elegance. Mud huts, colonial buildings, and a mix of French expatriates, African locals, and Allied operatives. Under de Gaulle's command, this territory became a hub for resistance, rallying colonies like Chad and Cameroon against Vichy. Nica's roles were multifaceted, leveraging her intelligence, multilingual skills, and unflinching courage, decoding encrypted messages for Gaullist intelligence in steamy radio rooms, hunched over Enigma-like machines or Morse code keys, analyzing enemy communications intercepted from Vichy broadcasts or Axis signals to aid Allied strategies, sometimes working 18-hour shifts amid power outages and tropical storms. The work was painstaking, translating German codes into actionable intelligence, like troop movements in North Africa, contributing to operations that supported Montgomery's 8th Army. She also hosted propaganda broadcasts on Radio Brazzaville, a vital lifeline for Free France, her voice crackling over the airwaves with messages of hope and resistance. Frenchmen, speak to Frenchmen, de Gaulle's motto, urging collaborationists to defect, sharing news of Allied advances and boosting morale in occupied Europe. Her broadcast, scripted with stirring rhetoric, reached listeners huddled around hidden radios in France, evoking tears and resolve. One might imagine her calm tone, honed by Rothschild poise, cutting through static to declare the flame of French resistance must not be extinguished. Her service extended to the front lines, driving ambulances through the harsh deserts of Egypt and North Africa with the 1st Free French Division during the North African Campaign, a pivotal theater from 1940 to 1943 that saw Rommel's Africa Corps clash with Allied forces. Joining in 1942, after training in basic medical aid and vehicle maintenance, Nica navigated sandstorms that blinded visibility, minefields sown by retreating Germans, and blistering heat that turned metal scorching. With the division under General Koenig, she participated in key battles like Bir Hakeim in Libya, where Free French held off Italian and German assaults for 2 weeks in June 1942, allowing the British to regroup at El Alamein. Driving Red Cross-marked ambulances, often repurposed trucks with stretchers rattling over dunes, she transported wounded soldiers from foxholes to field hospitals, dodging strafing Stukas or artillery shells, her hands gripping the wheel as tires sank in soft sand. One grueling run might involve evacuating casualties under cover of night, headlights off to avoid detection, the moans of the injured mixing with the engine roars. She delivered medical supplies on freighters targeted by German U-boats, part of convoys from Alexandria to Tobruk, where wolf packs lurked, torpedoes slicing through waves. A near miss could send ships listing, forcing rescues in choppy seas. Facing constant peril that tested her resolve, dysentery from contaminated water, scorpion stings intense, and the emotional toll of seeing comrades fall. Nica's composure shone, perhaps drawing from her father's resilience or her aviation training's discipline. These experiences forged bonds with fellow resistance, like Leclerc's 2nd Armored Division fighters, sharing rations around campfires and stories of pre-war life. Nica's bravery earned her the rank of lieutenant from Allied forces, a decoration she wore with pride, along with medals for her service, including possibly the Croix de Guerre or Légion d'honneur, though she rarely spoke of it later, downplaying her role in post-war conversations as just doing what was needed. Promoted for her intelligence work and frontline valor, she stood at attention during ceremonies in dusty African outposts, the French tricolor fluttering amid palm trees. This chapter, often overlooked in jazz-focused narratives that emphasize her later patronage of bebop legends, revealed her as a true resistance fighter, later symbolized on the cover of Thelonious Monk's album Underground, depicting her in wartime attire with a defiant gaze, rifle slung over her shoulder, evoking the clandestine network she navigated. The war forged her independence, teaching her the value of action over passivity in the face of tyranny, the fragility of life amid chaos, witnessing deaths from shrapnel or disease, and deepening her compassion for the oppressed, from African colonial troops fighting for a France that marginalized them to Jewish refugees echoing her family's vulnerabilities. These qualities, resilience, empathy, and a disdain for injustice, would draw her to the marginalized world of jazz musicians in post-war America, facing their own battles against racism and hardship, her wartime scars fueling a lifelong commitment to supporting the underdog. By 1945, as Allied victories in Normandy and the Pacific brought peace, Nica emerged transformed, her pre-war hostess role a distant memory, ready for new horizons. Post-war diplomatic life and growing discontent, 1945 to 1951. With the war's end in 1945, as Europe began rebuilding from ruins and the world celebrated victory, Jules entered the French diplomatic service, posting the family first to Norway, where they lived in Oslo amid snowy landscapes and formal embassy functions, and then Mexico City, where he served as counselor at the embassy in a vibrant but politically turbulent environment. The conclusion of World War II marked a profound shift not just for nations, but for individuals like Nica and Jules, who had endured years of separation, peril, and uncertainty. Victory in Europe Day, May 8, 1945, brought jubilant crowds to the streets of Paris, with church bells ringing and Allied flags waving. But for many, including the de Koenigswarters, it was a time of cautious optimism amid the rubble. France, liberated but scarred by occupation and collaboration, faced reconstruction under de Gaulle's provisional government, with trials for Vichy officials and efforts to restore the economy through the Marshall Plan's aid, starting in 1948. Jules, having served valiantly in the Free French forces, leveraged his wartime connections and diplomatic acumen to secure a position in the Quai d'Orsay, France's foreign ministry. His entry into the service was a natural progression, drawing on his pre-war experience as a mining engineer and banker, skills that translated well to post-war negotiations over resources and alliances. The family's first posting to Norway in late 1945 or early 1946 came as part of France's efforts to re-establish ties with neutral countries that had navigated the war with delicate diplomacy. Norway, liberated from Nazi occupation in May 1945, was rebuilding under King Haakon VII, with its snowy landscapes, fjords, glistening under the midnight sun in summer and blanketed in deep white during polar nights, providing a stark, beautiful contrast to the deserts of North Africa where Nica had driven ambulances. In Oslo, the family resided in a stately embassy residence near the royal palace, where formal functions dominated their social calendar, state dinners with Norwegian officials discussing Arctic fisheries, or NATO's nascent formation in 1949, cocktail receptions amid crystal chandeliers, and cultural exchanges highlighting Edvard Grieg's compositions. Nica, reuniting with her children after their safe haven with the Guggenheims in America, threw herself into motherhood, organizing sleigh rides through the Vigeland Sculpture Park's frozen paths, or teaching the kids to ski on gentle slopes, but the diplomatic protocol, endless handshakes, curtsies, and scripted conversations began to grate on her independent spirit forged in wartime action. The move to Mexico City in 1948 or 1949 elevated Jules's role to counselor at the French embassy, a position involving advising on Latin American affairs during a time of Cold War maneuvering. Mexico, under President Miguel Alemán, was a vibrant mosaic of ancient Aztec ruins like Teotihuacan, colonial architecture in the Zócalo, and modern murals by Diego Rivera depicting revolutionary history. Yet it was politically turbulent. Labor strikes, corruption scandals, and U.S. influence through the Good Neighbor policy created a backdrop of intrigue. The embassy, located in the upscale Polanco district, hosted lavish events amid bougainvillea-draped courtyards where diplomats mingled with Mexican elites discussing oil nationalization or the Korean War's outbreak in 1950. For Nica, this posting offered exotic allure, markets bursting with colorful piñatas, mariachi music echoing in plazas, and trips to Acapulco's beaches. But the superficiality of diplomatic life soon overshadowed it. She struggled in this world of formal receptions and superficial protocol, attending endless cocktail parties with dignitaries from the U.S., Britain, and Latin American nations, where conversations revolved around trade tariffs or cultural exchanges like French film screenings, exchanging pleasantries in multiple languages, French with colleagues, Spanish with hosts, English with Americans, demanded constant poise, her wardrobe of elegant gowns and pearls feeling like a return to her childhood constraints under strict governesses at Tring Park, where white dresses and etiquette lessons had stifled her creativity. The embassy's hierarchy enforced rigid hierarchies. As the counselor's wife, Nica, was expected to host teas for spouses, organize charity bazaars for war orphans, and accompany Jules to operas at the Palacio de Bellas Artes, smiling through boredom as Puccini's arias filled the air. These duties, while glamorous on the surface, dancing waltzes under chandeliers or toasting with champagne, left her yearning for the authenticity she had tasted in wartime camaraderie, where life and death decisions replaced small talk. Her growing discontent manifested in subtle ways, building like a storm over the Sierra Madre Mountains. She later dismissed it bluntly as complete bullshit, a raw expression of her frustration that captured her no-nonsense candor, uttered perhaps in private letters to her sister Miriam or during rare candid moments with friends. This phrase, laced with American slang picked up from her children's time in New York, underscored her rejection of the facade, the bullshit of pretending interest in petty rivalries among embassy wives or feigning enthusiasm for protocol manuals dictating fork placements. Jules, once her adventurous partner in honeymoon escapades, had grown more rigid in peacetime, his wartime heroism channeling into career ambition. Intolerant of her growing jazz interest, which began as a quiet hobby with records smuggled from Paris or acquired during brief trips, he smashed her vinyls in jealous rages when she returned late from listening sessions at local clubs or friends' homes, shattering discs of Duke Ellington's swinging orchestrations or Louis Armstrong's gravelly trumpet solos that she cherished as escapes. Perhaps It Don't Mean a Thing If It Ain't Got That Swing, or West End Blues. These acts of destruction symbolized deeper fractures. Jules viewed jazz as a frivolous distraction, perhaps associating it with the American GIs who had liberated France, or resenting how it pulled Nica away from family duties. Late nights might involve her slipping out to Mexico City's nascent jazz scene, influenced by expatriate musicians, or local bands fusing mambo with swing at venues like the Casablanca Club, returning with a glow that irked him. His rages, fueled by possessiveness or stress from negotiating French-Mexican trade deals amid the Truman Doctrine's anti-communist push, escalated tensions, leaving shards of broken records as metaphors for their crumbling harmony. For Nica, these incidents echoed her father's entrapment in the Rothschild banking world, where passion was sacrificed for obligation, stirring a restlessness that whispered of change. A turning point came in 1948 during a trip to New York to hear Duke Ellington's Symphony Black, Brown, and Beige at Carnegie Hall, a groundbreaking work blending jazz with orchestral elements to tell the story of African American history. This journey, perhaps arranged as a brief respite from embassy life, or tied to Jules's diplomatic errands in the U.S., coincided with a pivotal moment in jazz evolution. Ellington, the maestro of the Cotton Club era, premiered the full suite in 1943, but post-war performances like this 1948 revival at the iconic Carnegie Hall, its gilded auditorium packed with enthusiasts from Harlem to high society, cemented its status as a cultural milestone. The symphony divided into three movements: Black, depicting slavery's chains; Brown, honoring emancipation and heroes like Frederick Douglass; and Beige, exploring modern struggles, wove spirituals, blues, and big band swings into a narrative of resilience. Nica, seated in a box seat amid the hall's velvet curtains and crystal chandeliers, felt the music's power, Mahalia Jackson-inspired gospel choruses evoking pain, trumpet solos soaring with hope, and rhythmic pulses that mirrored her heartbeat. Ellington, dapper and Tales at the piano, conducted with elegance his band, featuring legends like Johnny Hodges on saxophone, delivering a performance that transcended entertainment, challenging racial barriers in a still segregated America. For Nica, fresh from Mexico's own social divides, the work resonated deeply, its themes of oppression and triumph echoing her wartime aid to refugees and her growing awareness of injustice. Staying longer than planned, perhaps extending her visa with Rothschild influence or citing family visits, she wandered New York's post-war boom, Times Square's neon lights, Central Park's blooming paths, and Harlem's Renaissance lingering in clubs like Minton's Playhouse, where bebop was born. This extension allowed a serendipitous visit to her brother's former piano teacher, Teddy Wilson, a suave swing pianist known for his work with Billie Holiday on classics like Strange Fruit. Wilson, elegant and soft-spoken, hosted her in his modest apartment, perhaps in the Upper West Side, surrounded by sheet music and a grand piano polished to a shine. Over tea or whiskey, he shared stories of the swing era, jamming with Benny Goodman in integrated bands that defied Jim Crow, and, sensing her interest, played Thelonious Monk's Round Midnight for her, his fingers gliding over the keys to unravel the tune's complex harmonies. Composed in 1944, the piece, Monk's signature ballad with its dissonant chords and melancholic melody, struck like lightning. Nica wept, replaying it over 20 times, transfixed by its haunting, angular beauty that seemed to echo her inner turmoil, the notes lingering like unresolved questions in her marriage. Missing her flight home amid this trance, she sat mesmerized, the music awakening memories of her father's mood swings or her own suppressed desires. She described it as a profound revelation, awakening a dormant part of her soul and making her realize the emptiness of her diplomatic existence, the bullshit of endless receptions paling against this raw, emotional depth. This encounter with Wilson's rendition, perhaps enhanced by his holiday collaboration's emotional weight, ignited a passion that consumed her, leading to furtive record purchases and late-night listens back in Mexico City. This musical epiphany marked the beginning of her separation from Jules in 1951. As she chose to pursue this new passion over her stifling marriage, packing her bags and leaving behind the ambassadorial life for the unknown allure of New York's jazz underground. The years between 1948 and 1951 were a gradual unraveling. Arguments escalated over her jazz obsession, Jules viewing it as a threat to their stability, while Nica found solace in the genre's freedom. Secret trips to New York, ostensibly for family or shopping, allowed her to explore clubs like Birdland, hearing live bebop that fueled her resolve. By 1951, with the Korean War raging and Cold War paranoia gripping the world, Nica's personal Cold War ended in divorce proceedings, custody battles over the children adding heartbreak. Leaving Mexico City's vibrant chaos, the Day of the Dead festivities, or Frida Kahlo's art circles she might have glimpsed, for New York's gritty promise, she stepped into uncertainty, her wartime bravery now channeling into personal liberation. This period, from Oslo's snows to Mexico's heat, was a bridge from heroism to self-discovery, her discontent brewing into a bold reinvention. Moved to New York and immersion in the jazz scene, 1951 to 1955. By 1951, Nica had relocated permanently to New York, renting a luxurious suite at the Stanhope Hotel on Fifth Avenue, an elegant Art Deco building overlooking Central Park, where she decorated with modern art and jazz records. This move marked a profound turning point in her life, a deliberate severance from the stifling diplomatic existence she had shared with Jules in Mexico City and Norway. The year 1951 was a time of transition for America as well, with the Korean War raging abroad and McCarthyism casting a shadow of suspicion at home, where artists and intellectuals faced scrutiny for alleged communist ties. New York, however, pulsed with post-war optimism. The Empire State Building lit up against the skyline, Broadway theaters buzzing with shows like The King and I, and the United Nations headquarters rising on the East River as a symbol of global hope. For Nica, then 37, the city represented freedom, a place where her wartime heroism could fade into the background, allowing her to reinvent herself amid the anonymity of skyscrapers and the vibrancy of cultural melting pots. The Stanhope Hotel, built in 1926 with its ornate facade of limestone and brick, exuded old-world charm, its lobby adorned with marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and doormen in crisp uniforms, who greeted guests with deference. Nica's suite, likely on a high floor with views of Central Park's lush greenery, horse-drawn carriages clopping below in summer, ice skaters gliding on Woolman Rink in winter, was a sanctuary of elegance. She personalized it with abstract paintings from her European studies, perhaps a Kandinsky-inspired canvas echoing the dissonance she would soon embrace in jazz, and shelves groaning under stacks of vinyl records, early bebop pressings that filled the rooms with the sounds of Dizzy Gillespie's trumpet or Max Roach's intricate drums. This space became her haven, a far cry from the formal embassy residences where protocol dictated every detail. Yet even here, societal barriers loomed. The hotel, like many upscale establishments in segregated America, had unwritten policies against interracial mixing, reflecting the era's Jim Crow remnants in the North, where redlining and social exclusion persisted despite legal desegregation efforts. Nica's title as Baroness de Koenigswarter and her Rothschild wealth, estimated in millions from inheritances and trusts, initially shielded her, allowing managers to turn a blind eye as she hosted late-night gatherings with black musicians. These soirees, often starting after midnight when clubs closed, turned her suite into an impromptu salon, cigarette smoke curling toward the ceiling, laughter mingling with improvised riffs on a portable keyboard, and conversations flowing from musical theory to personal struggles. In a time when the civil rights movement was nascent, Brown v. Board of Education wouldn't desegregate schools until 1954. Nica's actions were quietly subversive, her privilege enabling bridges across racial divides that few white women of her class dared to cross. She became a fixture in the jazz world, cruising Harlem and Greenwich Village in her convertible Bentley, a sleek silver model that turned heads, attending clubs like the Five Spot Cafe, with its intimate stage, the Village Vanguard's basement vibes, and Birdland's bustling energy, where she sipped martinis and absorbed the revolutionary sounds of bebop. The Bentley, imported from England and customized with leather seats and a powerful V8 engine, was more than transportation. It was a statement of her independence, roaring down Lenox Avenue in Harlem or weaving through Washington Square's bohemian crowds. Purchased perhaps with her inheritance, it symbolized her break from Jules's control, its top-down drives allowing the city wind to tousle her hair as she navigated the grid of Manhattan. Harlem in the early 1950s was a cultural epicenter, its streets alive with the legacy of the Renaissance. Apollo Theater marquees lighting up with names like Ella Fitzgerald, and corner stores selling soul food amid the push for civil rights with figures like Malcolm X beginning to organize. Nica's cruises took her to Minton's Playhouse, where bebop was born in the 1940s, through jam sessions led by Monk and Gillespie, its small stage fostering innovations like fast tempos and complex chords that rejected swing's danceable predictability. Greenwich Village, with its beatnik cafes and folk clubs, offered contrast. Washington Square Park filled with guitar-strumming protesters against the Korean War or McCarthy hearings. The Five Spot Cafe, a modest spot on Cooper Square, opened in 1956, but with roots in earlier venues. Featured an intimate stage where musicians played inches from the audience, its walls absorbing the sweat and smoke of performances. The Village Vanguard, in a dingy basement on 7th Avenue since 1935, exuded underground allure, dim lights, low ceilings, and a policy of artistic freedom that hosted everyone from Miles Davis to poets like Allen Ginsberg in later years. Birdland, named after Charlie Bird Parker and located on Broadway near 52nd Street, the fabled Swing Street, was the bustling heart of Midtown jazz, its neon sign beckoning crowds to a room packed with tables, where patrons sipped martinis, Nica's preferred gin with a twist, while absorbing bebop's revolutionary sounds. Bebop itself, emerging in the 1940s as a response to commercial swing, was intellectual and defiant. Charlie Parker's lightning-fast saxophone runs, Dizzy Gillespie's bent trumpet, and Monk's off-kilter piano challenging listeners to engage deeply rather than dance mindlessly. For Nica, these clubs were classrooms. She arrived in elegant dresses, a cigarette holder in hand, observing from corner tables, her presence gradually earning respect from musicians who saw beyond her wealth to her genuine passion. Sipping martinis, dry with olives, she absorbed the music's essence, its improvisations mirroring her life's unfolding chaos, while chatting with bartenders about set lists or buying rounds for struggling players. This immersion wasn't superficial. It was a lifeline, pulling her from post-war disillusionment into a community where creativity trumped convention. In 1954, during a Paris jazz festival at the Salle Pleyel, she met Thelonious Monk backstage through mutual friend Mary Lou Williams, a pioneering female pianist. The festival, part of the Salon du Jazz or similar events in the mid-1950s, brought American expatriates and European enthusiasts to the elegant Salle Pleyel, a concert hall on Rue du Faubourg Saint-Honoré, known for hosting Stravinsky premieres and now vibrating with transatlantic jazz. Paris in 1954 was a haven for Black American artists escaping U.S. racism, Josephine Baker's cabarets, James Baldwin's writings, and the festival showcased bebop's global reach, with crowds in berets and trench coats applauding innovative sets. Mary Lou Williams, a trailblazing Kansas City pianist who had arranged for Ellington and mentored young talents, introduced Nica backstage amid the chaos of cables, smoke, and tuning instruments. Williams, known for her Zodiac Suite and Catholic faith-inspired works, recognized Nica's enthusiasm from earlier encounters, perhaps during Nica's 1948 New York trip. Monk, then 37, appeared enigmatic, his tall frame draped in a suit, beret tilted, goatee framing a subtle smile, his presence commanding yet withdrawn. Struck by his aura, quiet intensity masking a mind that composed like a puzzle master, Nica called him the most beautiful man she'd ever seen, drawn to his innovative playing that twisted harmony into unexpected shapes. Their conversation might have started awkwardly, Monk's laconic style contrasting Nica's eloquence, but deepened over shared cigarettes, discussing his compositions like Straight No Chaser or the Parisian audience's reception. This meeting ignited a bond that transcended romance, becoming a profound friendship where Nica championed his angular, dissonant bebop style that challenged conventional harmony, its offbeat rhythms, and chromatic runs define easy listening in an era when pop like Perry Como dominated charts. Monk, often misunderstood and battling mental health issues, found in Nica a steadfast ally, her support helping him navigate the industry's prejudices. Their bond deepened quickly, with Nica attending his gigs upon returning to New York, ferrying him in her Bentley to rehearsals, and advocating for his genius amid critics who dismissed his weird style. She divorced Jules in 1956, losing custody of her 3 younger children in a painful court battle, but gaining freedom to fully embrace her new life. The divorce, finalized after years of strain, involved acrimonious proceedings in French courts, where Jules cited her abandonment for jazz pursuits, while Nica argued irreconcilable differences. Losing Barrett, Sean, and Carrie, then teenagers, to Jules's custody was devastating, with visits limited and letters her main connection, but it liberated her from marital constraints. Licensed as a manager by the American Federation of Musicians in 1955 or 1956, she negotiated contracts for artists like Horace Silver, whose soulful hard bop she adored, his Song for My Father, later capturing familial longing she might have felt. Hank Mobley, the understated tenor saxophonist with his smooth lyrical lines on albums like Roll Call. Sir Charles Thompson, a veteran pianist blending swing and bebop, his Kansas City roots evoking Williams's influence. And the Jazz Messengers, Art Blakey's dynamic group that evolved into a hard bop institution, with Nica securing gigs and fair pay in an exploitative industry. Her managerial role involved haggling with club owners over percentages, booking tours, and ensuring royalties, her business acumen from Rothschild lineage shining. In 1957, deeming the 5-spots piano inadequate for Monk, its keys sticky and out of tune from years of use, she purchased a new Steinway Grand, a $5,000 investment, equivalent to $50,000 today, ensuring his performances shone with the clarity his music demanded, the rich tones allowing his dissonant clusters to resonate fully in the small venue. Tragedy hit in 1955 when Charlie Parker, battling illness and addiction after years of heroin use and relentless touring, sought refuge in her suite, collapsing on her couch amid fever and pain. Parker, the bebop virtuoso nicknamed Bird for his soaring alto saxophone flights, was at his nadir. Years of drug abuse since the 1930s, coupled with a grueling schedule, gigs from Kansas City to California, had ravaged his body, leading to ulcers, cirrhosis, and heart issues. Arriving unannounced in March 1955, perhaps after a canceled flight or fallout with his wife Chan, he knocked on Nica's door disheveled, seeking the Baroness's known compassion. Her suite, with its park views and record-strewn tables, became his temporary haven. She offered tea, blankets, and calls to doctors. But Parker, stubborn and distrustful of hospitals, from past experiences, refused care despite her pleas, insisting on rest. Over 3 days, he watched TV, laughing at a Dorsey Brothers show featuring jugglers, his final joy, while his condition worsened, pneumonia complicating his ailments. He died there on March 12th at age 34 from a heart attack, his body discovered by Nica, who alerted authorities amid shock. The scandal exploded. Headlines like "Bop King Dies in Heiress Flat" in the New York Post and "Bird in the Baron's Boudoir" in tabloids fueled rumors of foul play or romantic involvement, though no evidence supported them. Autopsy confirmed lobar pneumonia and advanced cirrhosis. His body aged like a 65-year-old's. Tabloids sensationalized her wealth and his demise, painting Nica as a mysterious enabler, with the whispers of overdose or affair ignoring her platonic aid. Evicted from the Stanhope amid the uproar, as management deemed the incident too scandalous for their upscale image, fearing reputational damage in conservative circles, she moved to the Bolivar Hotel on Central Park West, a more bohemian spot with Art Deco flair and lenient policies. This relocation inspired Monk's whimsical composition, Balou Bolivar Balusar, a playful tribute to her resilience, its quirky melody capturing the hotel's name in rhythmic wordplay, recorded in 1956 as a nod to her unyielding spirit amid adversity. Deepening bonds, challenges, and patronage, 1955 to 1970s. Nica's devotion to the jazz community grew exponentially, turning her into a maternal figure for struggling artists in an era when the music world was fraught with economic hardship, racial discrimination, and the personal toll of creative genius. By the mid-1950s, as bebop evolved into hard bop and the civil rights movement began to gain momentum in America, Nica positioned herself not merely as a fan or occasional supporter, but as a lifeline for musicians who often lived on the razor's edge of poverty and addiction. Her apartment at the Bolivar Hotel, and later her home, became sanctuaries where the boundaries between patron and family blurred. She hosted jam sessions in her apartments where musicians like Sonny Rollins, the masterful tenor saxophonist known for his thematic improvisation and collaborations with Max Roach, and Barry Harris, the Detroit-born pianist whose bebop tutorials influenced generations, would improvise until dawn amid cigarette smoke and laughter that echoed off the walls. These sessions weren't formal concerts but organic eruptions of creativity. Rollins might launch into a marathon solo on St. Thomas, his calypso-infused hit from 1956, while Harris comped behind him with intricate chords, the room filled with the clink of glasses and the haze of unfiltered Camels. Nica, often in a simple dress with a cigarette in hand, would sit quietly, absorbing the music, occasionally interjecting with encouragement or a request for a favorite tune. Provided meals were a staple of her hospitality, she cooked simple pasta dishes, spaghetti aglio e olio tossed in the kitchenette with garlic from local markets, or ordered takeout from Jewish delis like Zabar's on the Upper West Side, piling plates with pastrami sandwiches, niches, and pickles that fueled the all-nighters. For artists scraping by on gig pay, these acts of nourishment were more than sustenance. They were affirmations of worth in a society that often marginalized Black creatives. The Five Spot Cafe, a modest spot on Cooper Square, opened in 1956, but with roots in earlier venues. Her generosity extended far beyond the immediate. She redeemed pawned instruments from shops when players fell on hard times, scouring midtown pawnbrokers where saxophones and trumpets gathered dust, bargaining with her aristocratic poise to retrieve a cherished Selmer alto or a Gibson guitar hawked for rent money. In an industry where musicians like Hank Mobley or Art Pepper frequently pawned their axes to survive between tours, Nica's interventions kept the music alive, ensuring that a momentary financial crisis didn't silence a voice forever. She bought cars and pianos for those in need, recognizing that reliable transportation was crucial for gigs scattered across boroughs. Perhaps a used Ford for a bassist to haul his upright, or a Baldwin upright piano for a composer's home practice, delivered with a note of encouragement. Hospital visits were another cornerstone of her patronage. She visited musicians in wards across the city, from Bellevue's Stark Rooms to private clinics, bringing flowers, fresh lilies or roses from Central Park vendors, and encouragement during recoveries from overdoses or injuries. In the 1950s and 1960s, when heroin ravaged the jazz scene, claiming talents like Billie Holiday in 1959 or Chet Baker's ongoing struggles. Nica's presence offered solace, her conversations delving into life beyond the stage, sharing stories of her own losses to build trust. These visits weren't performative. They stemmed from her empathy, rooted in her father's suicide and her wartime experiences witnessing suffering in North African deserts. Her support extended to paying rents for cramped Harlem apartments, where rising costs in the post-war boom threatened eviction for artists like Gigi Grice or Kenny Dorham, who dedicated tunes to her in gratitude. Harlem in this period was a vibrant yet challenged neighborhood, its tenements housing legends amid urban decay, with the Apollo Theater as a beacon, but poverty lurking in shadows. Nica's checks, discreetly mailed or handed over during visits, kept roofs over heads, allowing focus on music rather than survival. Even in death, her care continued. She funded funerals for figures like Bud Powell, the brilliant but troubled pianist who died in 1966 after years of mental health battles and institutionalization. His innovative right-hand lines on Un Poco Loco forever etched in jazz lore. Nica ensured a service with fellow musicians paying tribute through solos. Sonny Clark, a heroin-addicted talent gone too soon in 1963 at age 31, his lyrical piano on Cool Struttin', a testament to his genius, received a dignified burial plot she arranged, complete with a headstone inscribed with notes of his contributions. And Coleman Hawkins, the saxophone pioneer who passed in 1969 at 64, his robust tenor tone defining swing on Body and Soul in 1939, was honored with jazz processions, musicians marching with horns blaring dirges turned triumphant, a New Orleans-style send-off that celebrated his legacy. These acts weren't mere charity, they were extensions of her belief in jazz as a vital art form, preserving its practitioners against a world indifferent to their struggles. In the broader context of the 1950s civil rights era, Montgomery bus boycotts in 1955, Little Rock integration in 1957, Nica's interracial alliances challenged norms, her white privilege amplifying black voices in a segregated industry where clubs like the Cotton Club once barred black patrons from entry. In 1958, she bought a modernist home in Weehawken, New Jersey, originally built for silent film director Josef von Sternberg with clean lines, floor-to-ceiling windows, and stunning Manhattan views across the Hudson. This purchase for around $50,000, a fortune then equivalent to $500,000 today, was a deliberate step toward creating a permanent haven, advised by Monk himself, who suggested a quieter space away from the city's frenzy. Von Sternberg, famed for The Blue Angel and Discovering Marlene Dietrich, had commissioned the house in the 1930s as a sleek retreat, its Bauhaus-inspired design featuring open floor plans, minimalist decor, and panoramic vistas of the Empire State Building twinkling at night. Perched on a bluff overlooking the river, the two-story structure offered seclusion yet proximity, a short ferry or drive to Midtown, ideal for musicians needing respite. Nica furnished it eclectically, abstract paintings from her travels, comfortable sofas for lounging, and a grand piano as the centerpiece, its keys soon worn from endless plays. The home became a symbol of her commitment, its modern aesthetic mirroring Bebop's forward-thinking ethos. Monk dubbed it Catsville for the dozens of stray cats Nica rescued, feeding them tuna from cans stacked in the pantry and letting them roam the rooms, curling on laps during quiet evenings, or scattering during raucous jams. She amassed over 300 felines at peak, naming them after musicians, Bird for Parker, Dizzy for Gillespie, their purring a constant soundtrack, turning the house into a feline jazz commune. later evolving to cat house in jazz slang, reflecting the term for cool guys or musicians who crash there for respite. The nickname captured the slang's double entendre, a place of warmth for cats, hip individuals, seeking shelter from life's storms. Musicians like Ornette Coleman or Cecil Taylor might drop by, finding beds, meals, and inspiration amid the meows, the Hudson's waves lapping below as a soothing backdrop. Her relationship with Monk intensified, becoming a profound friendship marked by quiet understanding that transcended typical patron-artist dynamics. From their 1954 Paris meeting, where Nica was captivated by his beautiful presence, their connection grew through shared drives, conversations, and mutual respect. Monk, often misunderstood, his eccentric hats, dances around the piano during sets, and cryptic speech belying a brilliant mind, found in Nica a non-judgmental ally who appreciated his genius without demanding explanations. She attended every gig possible, from the Five Spots residencies where he debuted Brilliant Corners in 1956 to Village Vanguard sets that solidified his status. Their friendship was symbiotic. Nica provided stability, Monk offered entry into a world of pure creativity. That same year, 1958, during a drive in Delaware for a gig, perhaps at a small club in Wilmington, the Bentley loaded with Monk's piano ties and Nica at the wheel, police stopped them for marijuana possession in a racially charged encounter. The stop, in Newcastle, Delaware, a conservative town amid the Jim Crow South's fringes, reeked of profiling. A white baroness with a black musician late at night raised suspicions. Officers, searching the car without clear cause, found a small amount of weed. Monk's used perhaps to manage his bipolar swings. To protect Monk's cabaret card, essential for performing in New York clubs under the city's strict licensing that barred those with drug convictions, Nica claimed the drugs as hers, her quick thinking sparing him revocation. Enduring nights in a dingy jail cell, cold bars, harsh lights, and taunts from guards, she faced a potential 3-year sentence, interrogation probing her motives, and isolation that tested her resolve. The arrest made headlines, sensationalizing the Baroness and the Bebopper, but Nica remained steadfast. After a 2-year legal battle funded by her reluctant family who viewed her life as eccentric, Rothschild relatives whispering of scandal, the charges were dropped on a technicality involving improper search procedures, a victory that highlighted systemic biases but allowed her to continue her work. As Monk's schizophrenia, likely bipolar disorder with manic episodes, worsened in the 1970s, leading to withdrawals where he paced silently, erratic behavior like refusing gigs, and hospitalizations for electroshock or medication adjustments, he retired to her home, where she cared for him until his death in 1982, administering medications like lithium to stabilize moods, cooking his favorite steak dinners medium rare with sides of collard greens, and sitting silently as he stared out the window for hours at the Manhattan skyline, lost in thoughts only he understood. The 1970s jazz scene shifted, fusion with Miles Davis's electric experiments, free jazz pushing boundaries. But Monk, after triumphs like his 1964 Time magazine cover, withdrew, his last major concert in 1976. Nica's Weehawken house became his refuge, the cats providing companionship during lucid moments when he played piano softly or composed fragments. Their bond was platonic yet profound. When asked if they were lovers, Monk quipped, "Why would I do that to my best friend?" emphasizing their soul-deep connection beyond romance, a partnership of mutual respect where Nica's care mirrored a sibling's devotion, her presence a constant amid his turmoil, until his stroke in 1982 at age 64. Later years, works, and creative contributions, 1960s to 1980s. From 1961 to 1966, Nica compiled 3 Wishes, an intimate look at jazz greats, interviewing over 300 musicians about their 3 deepest desires, paired with her Polaroid snapshots that captured them in vulnerable moments, at home, in clubs, or mid-laugh. This project emerged during a transformative period in Nica's life, as she deepened her immersion in the jazz world following the scandals and personal upheavals of the 1950s. By the early 1960s, America was undergoing significant social changes. The civil rights movement was gaining momentum with events like the Freedom Rides in 1961 and Martin Luther King Jr.'s growing influence, while the jazz scene itself was evolving from bebop's intensity to the freer expressions of modal jazz and the avant-garde. Nica, now in her late 40s and early 50s, found herself at the center of this ecosystem. Her Weehawken home, Cattsville, serving as a hub for musicians seeking respite from the road's rigors. The idea for 3 Wishes likely sprouted from casual conversations during these gatherings, where artists opened up about their lives beyond the stage, armed with a Polaroid camera, a portable, instant device popularized in the 1950s for its immediacy. Nica began systematically interviewing her friends and acquaintances, posing the deceptively simple question, if you had 3 wishes, what would they be? This wasn't a frivolous inquiry. In the context of the era's racial tensions, economic instability for freelancers, and the physical toll of touring, endless bus rides, smoky clubs, and irregular meals, the responses peeled back layers of vulnerability. She conducted these interviews in varied settings, at dimly lit after-hour spots like the Village Vanguard, where sweat-drenched performers, unwound post-set, in modest Harlem apartments, cluttered with sheet music and ashtrays, or even in her own living room, surrounded by her rescued cats purring in the background. The Polaroid snapshots added a visual intimacy, quick, unposed shots that froze moments of authenticity, like a musician mid-laugh with a cigarette dangling or gazing pensively out a window, their instruments resting nearby. These images, developed on the spot with that characteristic chemical scent, humanized the legends, showing them not as untouchable icons, but as ordinary people with dreams and demons. The compilation process spanned 5 years, a labor of love that involved transcribing tapes. Nica often used a portable reel-to-reel recorder to capture the conversations, and organizing the material thematically. She approached over 300 musicians, a staggering number that included established stars and up-and-comers, reflecting her vast network built through years of patronage. The interviews revealed the era's undercurrents, the grueling tours that left bodies exhausted and spirits frayed, the financial precariousness where a hit record could mean feast or famine, and the pervasive prejudice in segregated venues, where black artists performed for white audiences but entered through back doors. Published in English in 2008, long after Nica's death, thanks to efforts by her family and jazz historians like David Kasten, it revealed raw humanity in ways that academic studies couldn't match. For instance, Miles Davis, the cool trumpet innovator, whose Kinda Blue in 1959 redefined modal jazz, wished to be white to escape racism's barriers, a stark admission from a man whose career navigated white-dominated labels and audiences, highlighting the psychological toll of constant othering. Louis Armstrong, the gravel-voiced ambassador of jazz with his infectious grin and hits like What a Wonderful World from 1967, yearned to live to 100, cherishing every moment in a life marked by poverty to stardom arcs and health scares from his heavy touring schedule. And Monk, her closest confidant, simply wanted a friend like her, a touching nod to their bond that underscored the isolation many geniuses faced. His response delivered perhaps with his characteristic wry smile. During a quiet afternoon at Cattsville, responses often touched on health amid grueling tours, wishes for stronger bodies to withstand smoke-filled nights and red-eye flights, wealth to support families left behind in hometowns like Detroit or Kansas City, freedom from prejudice in segregated venues, where colored-only signs still lingered in the South despite Brown v's board, and recognition as serious artists beyond entertainment, a plea against being pigeonholed as mere performers for white elites. The book, when finally released, became a treasure trove for jazz aficionados, its pages blending wishes with photos that added emotional depth, like a shot of Art Blakey drumming on a tabletop mid-interview, or Carmen McRae in repose, her eyes reflecting unspoken dreams. Her photography captured candid moments, musicians in clubs sweating under lights, cityscapes of neon-lit Harlem, and everyday life like a saxophonist practicing on a fire escape. Nica's lens work, beginning in earnest during these years, was an extension of her early artistic training in Venice, Vienna, and Munich, where she had sketched landscapes and studied composition. By the 1960s, with Polaroid's instant film allowing spontaneity, she roamed New York's jazz enclaves like a documentarian. In clubs, she snapped performers mid-set, sweat beading on brows under harsh spotlights at the half note or blue note, capturing the intensity of a John Coltrane solo during his A Love Supreme phase in 1964, his face contorted in spiritual ecstasy. Cityscapes of neon-lit Harlem evoked the neighborhood's dual nature, vibrant, with the Apollo Theater's marquees glowing for acts like James Brown, yet shadowed by urban decay and the 1964 riots sparked by police brutality. Everyday scenes humanized the icons. A saxophonist like Sonny Rollins practicing scales on a rusty fire escape in the Bronx, his horn catching the sunset, or a bassist hauling his instrument through snowy streets, breath fogging the air. These photos weren't stage portraits, but slices of life, reflecting Nica's empathy for the grind behind the glamour. In 2023, L'œil de Nica, Nica's Eye, was published, showcasing these images in a lavish volume edited by jazz scholars and her descendants, its pages filled with black and white prints that evoked the era's grit and grace. Exhibited earlier at the 2007 Rencontre d'Arles Festival in France, a prestigious photography event in the ancient Roman arenas of Arles, where thousands flock annually. Her work was praised for its intimacy, critics noting how it demystified jazz legends, presenting them as flawed humans amid the civil rights struggles and Vietnam War protests of the time. The exhibition, curated with thematic sections like Backstage Whispers or Urban Solos, drew parallels to photographers like Roy DeCarava, who captured Black life with similar tenderness. Nica also painted abstract works at the Stanhope using unconventional materials like acrylics, mixed with milk for texture, Scotch tape for collage effects, and perfumes for subtle scents, creating vibrant, experimental pieces that echoed jazz's improvisation. Though she had moved from the Stanhope by the late 1950s, her earlier time there in the early 1950s inspired a return to painting, a hobby from her adolescence that she revived in quieter moments. In the 1960s, amid the pop art explosion of Warhol and Lichtenstein, Nica's abstracts were personal explorations, canvases splashed with bold colors evoking Monk's dissonant chords, or Parker's frantic runs. Mixing acrylics with milk created a crackled age texture like weathered club walls. Scotch tape allowed collage of ticket stubs or news clippings from civil rights marches, and perfumes, Chanel No. 5 dabbed on for olfactory layers, added a multisensory dimension, the faint floral notes evoking memories when viewed up close. These pieces, often untitled and kept private, were experiments in form, their swirling patterns mirroring the free jazz of Ornette Coleman in the 1960s, whose free jazz album in 1961 pushed boundaries. Though not commercially exhibited, they adorned Catesville's walls, inspiring visiting musicians to ponder their own creativity. Over 20 compositions honored her, including Monk's Pannonica, a tender ballad from 1955 that captured her essence in gentle wandering melodies. Horace Silver's Nica's Dream, a lyrical waltz from 1956 with his dreamy piano intro and Latin rhythms evoking moonlit nights. Gigi Grice's Nica's Tempo, upbeat and swinging from 1955, its alto sax lines dancing with joy. Sonny Clark's Nica, melancholic and introspective from 1957, its bluesy chords reflecting quiet introspection. Kenny Dorham's Tonica, playful and bright from 1955, trumpet fanfares celebrating her light. Tommy Flanagan's Thalonica, blending their names in a 1982 tribute with elegant piano runs, and Kenny Drew's Blues for Nica, soulful and blue from 1953, its minor keys conveying depth. These tributes, spanning decades, formed a musical portrait of Nica, each note a thank you for her unwavering support. Death and reflective conclusion. Pannonica de Koenigswarter died on November 30th, 1988 at age 74 from heart failure during surgery at Columbia Presbyterian Medical Center in New York. Her body weakened by adventures including multiple car crashes, one in her Bentley on a rainy night in the 1970s, skidding on slick roads after a late gig, and a brief cancer battle in the 1980s. But her passion never waned until the end. The 1980s were a quieter decade for Nica, as jazz shifted to fusion and smooth styles, but she remained a guardian of its roots, attending fewer events, yet hosting intimate gatherings at Catesville. Her health declined gradually, heart issues from years of stress, crashes leaving lingering pains, and cancer treated with chemotherapy that sapped her energy but not her spirit. Surgery aimed to address cardiac complications, but complications arose, leading to her peaceful passing surrounded by family. Her funeral at St. Peter's Lutheran Church, the House of Jazz, known for hosting memorials for musicians like Duke Ellington in 1974, featured a live concert with tributes from surviving friends like Sonny Rollins, who played a mournful saxophone solo on In a Sentimental Mood, his notes weaving through the pews filled with jazz luminaries, family, and fans. The service blended Lutheran hymns with improvisations, a fitting hybrid for her life. Per her wishes, her children scattered her ashes on the Hudson River at midnight, a poignant nod to Round Midnight, the song that changed her life as the city lights twinkled and a soft wind carried them away, the water's gentle lap echoing the melody's melancholy. Nica left a legacy of courage. Live true to yourself, love without bounds, and channel pain into purpose. Her improvised life, rich with heart and harmony, echoes as a testament to human fragility and beauty, inspiring us to embrace our own rhythms amid life's chaos.